what do you think, or what are you attributing this increase in young male suicide to?
You've talked about the sedation thing.
Male sedation hypothesis.
Yeah, which I find very interesting, which is obviously it's about drugs, but it's also about pornography and video games. And I think it's consistent with this idea of a retreat and a kind of pulling away from the difficulties and challenges of modern society. I think that's number one. And it's very interesting if you look at drug poisonings, which is separate from suicide. One of the reasons that's risen so much among men, and perhaps we can talk a bit about that, is because the sorts of drugs that the men are taking, they are very often taking them on their own. So there's no one there to revive them. These are not party drugs. These are not the drugs that the kids were taking when you were doing your job as a bouncer, right? This is not, let's take this and go out and have a good laugh. These are drugs of retreat. And my sense is that among many young men, that they don't feel that sure about the extent to which they are needed and valued. And in the end, that seems to be the best predictor in the end that someone will take their own lives, is that they have come to believe that the world will be better off without them, or that they're kind of not needed. I think one of the best protectors against losing your life to suicide is a real clarity that the world needs you. Right? That your absence from the world will be bad. And increasingly, I think particularly young men without much economic power, perhaps not quite sure where to go, what to do end up being unconvinced that the world is actually better off with them than without them. I think that the state of feeling unneeded is literally fatal. Through drugs, through suicide, etc. And also just like any society where where anybody ends up feeling like we're not sure we need you, that you might be a bit surplus to requirements, is just that's the society that's morally failing. And that's the sense that quite a lot of young men have now, which is just this uncertainty. So this would not be particularly kind of young men, but I think it speaks to the issue about neededness, which is that the suicide rate among men is 4 times higher than among women, every age group. But if you look at the specific cohort of divorced men and women, it's 8 times higher among divorced men than divorced women. It doesn't really go up among divorced women, but it really goes up among divorced men. And a plausible explanation for that, I think, is just this sense of like, well, am I needed? Am I connected? Do I have a sort of sense of responsibility and obligation? Am I tied in to some relationships